not on YouTube. So we are not broadcasting on YouTube right now. So we're going to start over.
Okay. I just did.
So give me. All right.
Technical difficulties, people. Technical difficulties. We're learning.
Live TV, fellas. Yeah, get the kinks out before you guys get famous, you know?
Exactly.
There you go, right?
It's not a problem, man. This is fun.
Go ahead.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the mess up. We thought we hit go live. We hit go live in one application and not the other. So, we were streaming, but not fully streaming to the world. So, my apologies. Today we had the distinct pleasure of being joined by Saint Kincade. He's a very active member on Twitter, a very vocal member of the Twitter sphere. I had incorrectly associated him with the Blexit movement, but now that we've gone live and then re-gone live, we've learned that he's not actually a member of the Blexit movement, but he's his own individual thinker. And with that said, with no further ado, Saint Kincade, please come on and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Saint Kincade. I'm located out here in Houston, Texas, originally from Detroit, Michigan. I'm a long-time Democrat, but I can say over the past year and some months, I've come to the realization that just my upbringing and everything like that, I lean more conservative. A lot of stuff happening on the left with liberalism and things like that goes against my moral compass, my value system, and everything like that. So I've become real vocal about breaking the indoctrination that a lot of young people have gone through. I can't say all millennials have gone through that or all black people have gone through that, but that's something that I experienced growing up that with no explanation until I did my own research and things like that. It's like, hey, we don't vote Republican, we strictly vote Democrat, straight ticket, that type of deal. But as you get older and as you start to do your own research and just become a free thinker yourself, you realize that, hey, I'm different. My thoughts are different, but we all have the same goal. We might just have a different path to that goal.
No, and I think, we just brought this up, but I want to re-bring it up because, Kyle mentioned the Blexit movement and that you're not specifically associated with the Blexit movement. You have some different philosophical leanings than they do. I mean, they're doing good work. You're doing good work. We need all kinds, we need everybody working, but I think what the important thing there, what we talked about earlier, is that, the black people, the Democrat Party has assumed that the black culture is a monolith on the voting block for so many years. And now we're starting to see this growth within the African-American, the black community of thought and of ideas and of independence. And, you're definitely one of those guys that's coming out and trodden your own path and showing other people it's perfectly fine to do that. And I mean, I really appreciate you having that voice and having that ability to come out and show everybody, and it shows people like us too. Cause I mean, there's white people who think, oh, well, we have to vote this way or that way because, this racism. So, you're coming out and you're showing everybody that, you're an individual, your skin color, your country of origin, your city, whatever, none of that defines you. You're an individual. You can think for yourself and vote based on what you believe.
But okay, so this is one, and I'm glad you said that. And this is the thing in terms of with me. It comes in. You're economics, so I know that you enjoy math and things like that, and your brother computer science and things. So you guys understand the math of it, the ones and zeros per se. But it's I'm just if you look at it from a strictly strategic point of view, and I'm just looking at it like, hey, we need to get things done. One side has enjoyed the constant vote from us from from the civil rights movement and things like that. And now we finally have a president in office who's transactional. Now you can call President Trump whatever you want to call President Trump, but President Trump is a deal maker. So if you have someone in office that's willing to make deals, why isolate yourself to the point to where nothing's going to get done? If you really cared about the community and you really cared about the black plight, and you're a person of power on the left, you wouldn't fully isolate yourself from President Trump. You would actually come to him and say, hey, let's work with you and let's get something done within the community. Because we have Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina, he's getting things done in terms of opportunity zones. You have Kim Kardashian, who's one of the most liberal people, married to Kanye West, but she came with prison reform and things like that because they're willing to have that conversation. They're at least willing to talk with the president and try to get things done. I don't need my president to be my best friend. I don't need him to be my savior. I need him to have policies that's great for my community, and I need to have policies that's great for America because my son is going to grow up in America. So I need to know that this is going to be a stable country so then he can have the opportunities that I had and then other people had. So that's the ones and twos of it.
Yeah, and I mean, we on our show, we say all the time, it's policy versus persona, right? Yeah. I don't really give a crap about his persona. You know, would I like him to sometimes stay off Twitter? Fine. But you know what? The policy, his actions are much stronger than his words. And he's followed through on most of his actions. And I feel like his actions have benefited not white people, not African-American people. He hasn't tried to benefit one side or the other. He's just had programs and policies that have benefited all Americans. And that's what is great about, you know, what we're doing right now is we see the lowest unemployment rate amongst African Americans, you know, above Black Americans, one of the lowest historical unemployment rates among veterans, one of the lowest unemployment rates among women, one of the lowest unemployment rates against all these other minority groups. You know, we saw in the State of the Union address, 70% of jobs created last year were filled by women. That's astronomical. I mean, that's absolutely belting the curve of what we've seen. And we're finally seeing wage growth. We're finally seeing, you know, with unemployment, we're seeing more engagement in the job market. We're seeing more people come back to work. We're seeing more people being able to sustain themselves and be able to put food on the table for their families and be able to provide for themselves. And that's regardless of what community you're in. You know, in 2014, when the oil field took a hit, man, I was out on my ass. And now oil field's coming back, whether the policies where we can export oil, it's helping us out a lot. We're doing a lot better. And that's, you know what? The oil field is definitely not a monolith. Everybody from everywhere works in the oil field. And I mean, we've got Latinos, we've got African Americans, we've got, I mean, in my office, I've got a guy from India, I've got a guy from France, I've got a guy from Cameroon, I've got a guy from Venezuela, I've got two guys from Venezuela, and a guy from Ghana. Ghana. So, I mean, there's guys from everywhere coming here to work and get those jobs, which is great. So just, I mean, I guess you said you had been a Democrat all your life. What was your history coming up to this point? Like, what made you a Democrat? Was it just family upbringing or, you know?
I'm going to say something that's not popular to say amongst a lot of people, and I'm just going to be completely 100% with you guys. Let's just start as when I was a full, you know, in college, right? So I'm in college, Obama's coming up. Now, growing up, you know, you see certain people in certain positions. You see Black men as athletes, you see Black men as entertainers. You might see a couple local businessmen, a couple congressmen if you grow up in Detroit, your mayor, things like that. But you never seen a Black man rise to the power of the presidency. Now, that's a mental thing, though. So me mentally wanting to see that, that's how I took Obama's presidency. I took it as like a mental barrier being removed from me and realizing that anything in the world is possible. Anything's possible in America if a Black man can reach the higher office. You know, a lot of people might, they get on his policies, his socialist leaning policies, things like that, Obamacare, things like that. As I'm older and mature, I can see how those policies have been a problem, how you had a mandate that if you didn't get it, you had to pay an $800 fine. That seems a little unconstitutional to me. But strictly from a mental standpoint, I can never take away from Obama what he did for me mentally in terms of, okay, he made me see America as the land of opportunity. Anything is possible. And once I had that epiphany, that's when I started to move more right, because I'm like, the Democrats are constantly telling me that I'm lacking, constantly telling me that I need them, constantly telling me that America isn't the country for me. But like you just said, you have people from Venezuela, Cameroon, Nigeria coming over, and they're finding success in America because they don't have that mental block saying that America is constantly against them. So I had to finally look at it like, who's feeding me this information? Who's brainwashing me to go out in the world every day and look at the world as this one big barrier? So once I remove those barriers, as if, okay, I'm not constantly under attack. Now I'm networking, meeting cool people like you and your brother that, you guys aren't racist. You guys aren't against me. You guys extended an olive branch to bring me on you guys' platform to talk about different things. And that's what has to happen. We're some people, not all, let me not say all, but it's a lot of people who just feed into this constant fear mongering on the left that, we have all these obstacles and we're missing out on our blessings that America offers us.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Now, I had a question for you. Like, growing up, watching different things on YouTube, I was really into PJ Media back in the day. And I don't know if you ever watched that or not, but there was Alfonso Rachel, who's also a drummer for 20 Pound Sledge or 10 Pound Sledge, I can't remember which, very much preached about how, as Republicans, we don't do anything to control the culture. We don't do anything to help ourselves in the culture, how the liberals have taken the culture completely over. Everything Hollywood, everything social media, everything on music was all geared towards the left. But then you had gentlemen like him, Coleon Noor, and Alan West come out who were very strong, voices for the conservative movement, and they also happen to be black. Did any of those gentlemen have any impact on you in your decision making, or was that just something that just because they had already kind of started chipping away at the wall, that it helped you break through?
Well, in terms of I will say that I'm drawing a blank right now, but Alan West, I know he's out here in Texas, and then that gentleman, he's good, but it wasn't necessarily Alan West. It was more so Thomas Sowell in terms of the economics, economist. Him. It was more so listening to his economic approach to it and how he broke down the math of it, though. And when he broke down the math of it, I read a lot in terms of Aristotle and Stoicism and being a Stoic and just controlling the controllables and understanding the numbers of it. And when he spoke in that manner, and he was just like, okay, if you look at it from the time of Jim Crow, so let's say 1964 till now, so let's say almost 60 some odd years, the leaps and bounds we took as African Americans, it's amazing. If you look at, and then he talked about, if you looked at socialist programs in other countries, how socialism has been a complete fail, but how those same type of programs are implemented in inner cities with in different things in terms of public school, public parks, even to go as further as Indian reservations, and you see the plight in those areas. It just got my mind going in terms of, something's wrong. These government programs, these government policies, this large government isn't working. It gets caught in this red tape, the bureaucratic, the machine, and it gets clogged up and nothing gets done. So that led me towards conservatism, but being raised by two pastors in terms of a Christian background, that I've always, I might have strayed in my 20s and things like that, but I've always had that foundation in terms of that Christian upbringing. So liberalism, the way they've been going in terms of the multiple genders, in terms of how they view the male and different things like that, I just constantly kept getting pushed more and more towards conservatism.
And then, since you've come out as a conservative, how much vitriol have you gotten online and offline from coming out? I know a lot of people, when they say I'm this or that, they start getting a lot of hate online and off.
Well, my two sisters are very progressive. My brother, he's a closet conservative, so we'll have little private conversations away from the siblings chat. and he'll be like, yeah, you're right, but I'm not going to say anything inside the siblings chat. So, because I don't want to get dragged by our sisters.
Well, maybe. Maybe not anymore after today. You're putting him on Front Street right now, man.
Exactly. I won't say any names though. You know, snitches get stitches type of deal. But no. But yeah, so me and my brother will have small little conversations and everything. And but my sisters are progressive, and then my friends are progressive. But I just stand tall on what I believe. And you know, if you're not taking care of my wife and my kid or paying any bills in my life, I really don't give a damn what you have to say, you know. And then Twitter is just Twitter. So I'm you know, I was born in 83, so I have a hard time comprehending how people are affected in their real life by things said online, you know. So yeah, it doesn't sway me either way. I can go and have a back and forth with somebody in regards to what I believe in, but it swaying me anyway because I'm conservative and caring what you think. It doesn't matter because they're going to say the same thing. Oh, you're a coon, or oh, you know, how can you support a racist, or whatever like that. If we're being totally yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I thought you were done. Go ahead and finish.
I mean, race is a finicky thing. So race is a finicky thing. If we're going to go into every white person's past and nitpick everything they might have said and what they might have supported, you know, black and white, we could never be friends. You know, it would just be a complete just wash, because you have to realize people evolve, times evolve. And I can't judge past situations through the scope of 2020. Because you're not taking in the full context of that time period, you know? So just like it's impossible. So logically, it doesn't make sense to me to do that. So I'm kind of somebody that, okay, I'm in the context, I'm in now, the here and now. So let's judge according to now. So if Trump was a racist and I was supporting a racist, if we're going by the actual definition of racism, where someone in a position of power, which he is, will want to oppress a certain people and prevent them from any type of opportunity, then you can't look at Trump's policies and equate any type of racism to that, because he wouldn't support it. He wouldn't have supported the First Step Act. He wouldn't have supported the opportunity zones, and he would have did anything within his power to prevent those things from happening, because racism means oppression.
No, I think, I mean, you hit a lot of nails on a lot of heads right there. I mean, I know, you know, it's the sins of our father kind of thing. You know, we can't be expected to pay for those 2 generations ago, because that wasn't us. That wasn't our dealings. And, you know, when I hear the argument on reparations, that's always what it is. Well, you know, your grandfather. It wasn't my grandfather. My grandfather wasn't here. He didn't own slaves. You know, that he wasn't part of that. So, you know what? You know, I think I could probably guess that you're anti-reparations.
Right. So this is okay. So in terms of reparations, like, let's keep it 100% honest. We have, and that's why I like the fact that you and your brother are comfortable saying black people, because black people, we're Black Americans. We don't say Anglo-Saxon American. We don't say Irish. We say white. That's a white guy. That's a black guy. Yeah. We don't. It's not a net. That's what we have to get away from, is because we're black and we're in America. We've been born here. We go 10 generations back, 15 generations back. We go hundreds of years back within this country, right? So we're black. If you are to give reparations to black people and you're supposed to cut the check, it might be a chance that it's a black person that looks like you and your brother. They might have some percentage of black DNA within them, to where, because we're so mixed now, you have so many hundreds of years of black people being here with interracial relationships, mixing with Indians, Mexicans, whatever, white people, whatever. So how are we going to do that? They're going to spend more money trying to figure out who deserves to get the check than the check is actually going to be. That doesn't make any sense. Now, if you wanted to do something, do something that was caused from Jim Crow, which is something that was more recent, that was just ended in 1964. That's something in regards to my father was born in 1950. So when it ended, he was only 14 years old. But I'm not even looking for a check. All I want is, and this is what helps people to rise. I don't care if you're Irish. I don't care if you're Jewish. I don't care what you are. What helps people to rise within America is education. So public schools, I don't understand how we live in the greatest country on this world, but we have public schools where you have 30, 40 kids in one classroom, you know? So my thing is always, I stand on the values of education and the importance of education. You will never see me on Twitter or anywhere screaming and asking for any type of check, because a lot of people who might get a check might not have financial literacy. And what are they going to do? They're going to blow the check, and then they're going to have themselves in a situation that they're even in more debt, kind of like what happens with lotto winners. They win the lotto, and their life ends up worse from before they hit the lotto because they spent themselves into further debt. I'm not saying everybody, but that could happen. So let's do education before we do any type of paycheck or anything like that.
So great. That's exactly where I was going to go. That was my next topic. We've talked about this on the show in a previous interview with a lady who was really far left. And we talked about, freedom of choice when it comes to school, allowing people to, I don't personally believe that your area code should dictate where you have to go to school. I think that any public school, you live, let's just say you live in the greater Austin area, and you are willing to drive your kid across school. Well, I'm trying not to put everybody's information out in case they don't want it. So let's just say you live in the greater Austin area, and you want your kids to go to Westlake or Lake Travis, but you don't live in that district. Well, if you're willing to drive your kids over there, then you should be allowed to enroll your kids in that school. And you want to see people actually start making differences in inner city schools, start flooding their schools. With all these inner city kids, because then all of a sudden they're going to say, wait, we need to get these kids back to the school so that they're not flooding our school, so that we're not 60 kids per class, so that we're not 70 kids per class in our schools. We like having our schools where it's 20, 30 kids per class. So let's make sure all the schools are then taken care of evenly. So for me, it's about school choice. And we saw President Trump, during the State of the Union, have that young lady up there and say, look, I've got a scholarship for you and you're going to get to go to the school you want. But, to me, that's how we start addressing that, is we start saying your area code, your zip code does not define your school at your school district. Now, I'm not saying that we bus kids from 3 towns away over to this school. This is a choice matter. Your parents are willing to drive you over there, then fine. We're not going to run buses that far. But, I think you should have the option of, hey, my school sucks, so I'm going to send my kids over there, and I'm not going to pay $5,000 a semester for my kid to go there. That's
the thing. You have to, because if you think about it, a lot of parents aren't going to do that. A lot of parents choose the school. That's why we move. Once you have kids, you move to an area with a good school district because you want your kid to go to a good school. But a lot of parents, you have a small percentage of parents that are willing to take that chance to say, hey, listen, but they should have that option, but they're going to take that chance of, hey, listen, I'm going to wake up earlier. I'm going to transport my kid to this school to give them a better education. If that parent is willing to make that sacrifice, that parent should be able to make that sacrifice without the risk of going to jail. But then that topic kind of bleeds over into the topic of you have these teachers unions. Now, my mom was a teacher for 20 years, so I love teachers. So teachers are some near and dear to my heart because teachers are babysitters, they're therapists, they're psychologists, they're everything. But with the teachers unions, you end up having a situation to where they fight for the pay of teachers, which I feel teachers should make more money. But you also have the bad end of it to where some teachers who aren't qualified or who are burnt out end up being allowed to keep their job, or they get shipped over to these less desirable areas and they're not motivated to help these kids learn any longer. They're just basically sitting in classrooms. The class, they're overwhelmed by the number of students in the classroom. And now you have kids going out into the real world and they don't have any type of skill set. They're not able to, they don't have a high proficiency in terms of reading and writing, mathematics. And that's bad culturally for Black Americans, but then on a broader scale, in terms of how we compete on a global scale, we're not even completed on a global scale in terms of robotics, engineering, things, science, all these different type of things play into that. And when you have conservatives speaking on these type of things, then that's going to push you even more further toward that. So a lot of the topics that are near and dear to me, to go full circle to where your brother started off at, is why you see someone like me moving more and more towards the right.
So yeah, I know my wife's a teacher, and you know she's up here in Bryan, and one of the things that constantly is, you know, one of her aggravations is that because she's done so well with the general ed students, they keep giving her more and more kids, whereas some of the other teachers aren't doing as well with them, so their class sizes are a little smaller, whereas my wife's has been growing. And she, you know, that frustrates her because she wants to be able to give these kids individual attention. She wants to be able to, you know, actually focus on them for a while. Instead, she's having to, you know, kind of, you know, be the mass, you know, fight keeper. You know, just try to keep everyone from fighting each other. But with the unions, you know, one thing that we've definitely noticed when it comes to teacher unions, well, yes, it does help their salaries and it does help them have a better quality of life. It unfortunately has a negative side effect in the fact that it protects bad teachers. And whereas in Texas, if a bad teacher is a bad teacher, their test grades are not doing well, they're going to get fired. They're not going to be a teacher for much longer. But up there in the unions, you know, if they have bad test grades, well, they're a union member. They're paying their dues, so they're going to be protected. They're going to keep a job, and that's unfortunate up there that that's happening. But you know, it's a double-edged sword. You want the teachers to be protected, but at the same time, you want to be able to get rid of the bad teachers who don't deserve to be teaching anymore. Exactly.
And I mean, that's like, like I said, I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, so I understand the purpose of unions. I love history, so the Industrial Revolution and Ford and the steel mills and the oil fields. So I understand how they were working these guys 7 days, 14-hour days, and the union had to come in and fight for these guys, fight for the 5-day work week, fight for these guys' pay, because they were running these guys into the ground. So I understand the importance of union in terms of pay and things, but it has to be a balance. The pendulum has to find level. The water has to find level in terms of these type of situations, because a lot of the times these marginalized communities are going to get the short end of the stick. Once these teachers burn out of the good schools, they're going to send them down to these less, funded schools, and they're not going to teach these kids. And one thing that always I laugh at is you have a lot of these politicians come in and they say, I'm a law and order candidate. I believe in law and order. And with you having a wife as a wife that's a teacher, you understand that if you don't want future criminals, you need to stop it early when they're in school. So in terms of education, different programs for them to go to learn, to keep them busy. Like when we were growing up, kids had to play an instrument. I don't even see kids holding instruments anymore, going to the bus stop anymore. So I don't know what these kids are doing in terms of after school programs. But if you want to prevent crime and different things, one way to stem that off is through education. So we have to figure out that balance. And I think, like you were saying, school choice is one of those ways, because a mother's love and a father's love is something that's unmatched. So you might have some parents that are willing to drive 3 counties over to a school that they feel gives their child that better chance at a better life.
Well, and I look at it in terms of an economic, equilibrium. Right now, what we have is this equilibrium of supply and demand, where certain people are getting the better of that supply curve. They're getting the supply they want, while other people don't have access to the supply they desire. So what we do is, by giving you freedom of choice, by opening the market up and not creating this monopoly where you only have this one option, where you only have this one school you can go to. Now, all of a sudden, I can send my kid to the next school over. Or, and you think about cities like Austin and Houston, those schools aren't terribly far away from each other. They're schools within reasonable distance. And now with traffic, I'm sure, it's a long drive, but there's schools that are reasonably close to each other. Now that we open it up and we give people choice, we take the power in the market and we supplant that back over to the consumer. And we give them the choice, we give them the ability, and that's going to help them better dictate. Now, I did want to point out one thing, because I hate teachers unions, man. I'm a big anti-teacher union guy. My kids are homeschooled because I have 5 kids. My wife does an amazing job homeschooling our kids. Each one of my kids that's a school age is already a grade ahead. So, you know, I want my kids to be able to excel. And unfortunately, in Texas, our public school system is set up to the lowest common denominator. And I'm not saying that to be mean, but they've got to teach to the kid who doesn't get it. They can't teach to the brightest kid in the class. They got to teach to the lowest kid in the class. But one thing I was going to say is money does not always beget better results, because California has the highest paid teachers in the country, and yet they're somewhere like 42nd in average test scores.
Right.
So paying teachers more money, like Kyle said, is not the solution, necessarily the only solution. Paying good teachers more money is.
Correct.
But getting rid of bad teachers is definitely something we need to start doing.
Correct. And that brings me to another thing. And I just want to I love economics, and I love the way you guys mind things, because Milton Friedman was another one that just blew the doors off of, like, mentally me. Just how he approached everything, and just how he'd throw something at you like, oh yeah, you love government, huh? How does your park look? And then you think like, oh, my park looks like crap. And then you're like, well, that's government run, you know? And then he says something like, hey, you know, you want to put all these regulations on a car company, but if you have 2 car companies putting in seatbelts and they notice when they're crashing, people aren't dying, more people are going to naturally, in a free market, go to those car makers and demand that seatbelts are in there, because they don't want to die when they get in the crash. So that goes back to what you're saying, is that open the market up in terms of schools and give people the options. Because if you have more people going to those schools and you set it up to a way that the number of students that you have, their money is allocated for those schools, then you're going to have certain schools trying to reach those number of students and doing what they have to do in order to reach those levels so they get access to that money. So, I mean, with you saying that made me think of Milton Friedman, and that makes perfect sense in my mind. But a lot of people can't follow that type of logic these days. So good luck with that.
So that brings up an interesting question.
My brother.
Go ahead, Ross.
I was gonna say, you my brother from another color mother, because oh man, I've been on a Milton Friedman kick now for like 2 months. I've been watching all his YouTube. On YouTube you can watch all his lectures from the day. I've been buying his books. I've been going through Milton Friedman, Chicago economics. Man, I love it. Yeah. And I love Milton Friedman. One of the greatest things he ever said is that there is nothing such permanent as a temporary government program.
Right.
That the only thing that can be more permanent than a temporary government program is death itself.
I watched that same lecture, and that's why we cannot allow Sanders to get in office, and we can't allow that to get pushed through, because it will bankrupt the country. But once people are exposed to it, you're never going to be able to get rid of it. Period. It's stuck. You're stuck with it.
No. So, and Ben Franklin said, the death of the republic. I'm sorry, Kyle, I will let you get back, but he hit my note, man. You got to let me go when he's talking economics, bro. So, Benjamin Franklin said the death of our republic will be when the voter understands that they can vote for their own paycheck. He said that will be the death of the republic. Yeah. And that is so true. And it's exactly to what you're saying, in that all of these government programs get built up. All these and we can't get rid of them, because then it's, I'm not going to vote for somebody who's going to take money away from me. Right. Even Republicans nowadays, they're not voting. Even our Republicans aren't voting to take away money that they like. Exactly. Rand Paul and Chip Roy are like the 2 Republicans I know right now who are just going, the budget. I don't care. Let's scrap the budget. Let's start over. Let's spend less money. Yeah. And that's where I'm at. I'm on that same token, because I say that budget deficit is going to kill Americans way before the carbon emission does. Oh man, come on. Let's not even talk about that thing right there. Climate change. Let me say, okay, let me let your brother go, because he's been waiting for a minute, but yeah, I'm with you on that.
So I was going to go back to the school choice and how it pertains to the black community, because as we both know, kids being able to play high school football is a very, for some of these kids, that might be the only chance that they have to get out of these, inner cities and actually make a living. And we've seen quite a few success stories come out of that situation. So, like, most recently, A&M, and I'm a homer, so I'm going to admit, I'm an Aggie homer. I went to Texas A&M. We had Damon Demas transfer from inner city shockingly. He transferred from inner city Houston up to Tomball to have a better life for himself, better academics, better school. But the UIL came out and prevented him from playing his senior year of high school football. And just now he's able to start playing high school basketball. If we were to do school choice and do something of that nature, we'd have to completely restructure the UIL and stuff and other organizations like that would prevent kids, or we'd have to put some kind of limitations in effect to prevent recruiting at the high school level, because that's the main thing that people are, why they're against school choice, is because they don't want kids being recruited to certain high schools to just have a powerhouse high school football team.
Yeah, and I know that's big in Texas. Like, I'm in Houston right now, so I totally understand that. But if we all know Texas football, we all know it's loopholes in Texas football. I don't know why he didn't just move in with one of the coaches and then change his address to one of the coaches' address, and then have the coaches be his legal guardian. Somebody was jealous of him and must have went directly to some power players and let that. So for that situation to get that out of control, where he couldn't play his senior year of ball, because that happens all the time. You have prep schools where kids get bussed out of the inner cities into prep schools, or in Houston, we have different boarding schools that you can go play at, like the Kincade school, St. John's, things like that, where they'll just bust them there and they'll play ball there and have that opportunity. So it's workarounds, build campuses. Have little campuses there where now they can, they're registered at that campus, and now they can go to school. They can be registered in that area and they can play ball, because if for any problem like that, I feel like it's a simple solution in regards to navigating around that. Athletics is important for African Americans, for people of different marginalized groups, in terms of even white kids in Texas. That's their way out. They're gonna ball out, and they're gonna get to Oklahoma. They're going to get to Texas A&M. They're going to get to Texas. They're going to do whatever they got to do to get out of these small towns. So I love the discipline and the opportunities that athletics provide. But as technology and these different things expand, us Americans, we have to start putting our pride in different things. We have to start putting our pride in engineering and different STEM programs and build these programs up, because the way scientists and the way social justice warriors are going, they're going to figure out a way to get rid of boxing. They're going to figure out a way to get rid of football. They're going to figure out a way they're trying to get rid of girls track and field. They're letting transgender girls run against regular girls, and these regular girls are getting smoked and losing out on scholarship to boy girls. And it's a problem. So we just got to do better in highlighting other ways out of impoverished situations. And that's what I'm about.
So I know for myself and Ross, being able to play sports as a kid growing up, for us, that was a big way for our parents to mandate that we get good grades.
Exactly.
Like our parents, if we wanted to play any sport at all, it wasn't you had to pass. It was you had to get straight A's. So our parents were a little bit more strict in that format, but I know other parents are the same way. So being able to play sports is a good motivator for some of these kids that had never had any interest in academics before, to at least get a passing grade if they've never done anything before. And my wife, that's what she struggles with, because she's a 6th grade teacher. So they don't play sports yet. So she doesn't have that, threat to loom over them. Hey, if you don't do your work, you can't go play football, or you can't go play basketball, you can't go play baseball. The only thing that she has to threaten them with is the band that they have there in their school. So
what that tells me about us here on this podcast? We weren't blue chippers though, because we were blue chippers. We would have just had the A's then, huh?
I was going to say that because that's a common theme. That's a common stereotype amongst Texas athletics is that those top blue chip athletes, they can't read or write, but they got straight A's during high school. We've seen that on Varsity Blues. We saw that on, Friday Night Lights. We saw that on King of the Hill. All these shows, these top athletes, they got the grades regardless. But when do we finally just say enough's enough? Academics is more important than athletics.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we need to get. Academics is more important than athletics because 1% of football players are going to make money playing football. Right?
Exactly.
You can be a star prospect. You can be everything you want to be as a 6th grader, an 8th grader, an 11th grader. And one injury, one bad move, and you're done. And you're not going to ever make $1. But that education, if you had that education, you'd always have that to fall back on. My back got real hurt when I was 24, 25, and I had to have 2 surgeries to be able to do things again. But I always had my education to be able to earn money. I always knew, even if I don't get better, I'll be able to make a living for myself because I have an education, I have a degree, and all these things. So I understand the argument that some kids are going to go to some schools because that gives them a better opportunity to play football, but they're doing that right now anyway.
Yeah.
They're doing that. They're doing that now. Like you said, they're moving in with the coaches or they're yada, yada, blah, 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 blah. Athletics does not come before academics.
And that's what we have to do. We have to get that perception and that narrative. It's a must. Like I played football and playing football allow me the grades to go to a university and get my education. Yeah. I didn't play in college, but my grades were good enough because I had to be eligible to play and to get into college. And, you get access to tutors, teachers are more likely to help you out and different things like that. But I wish I would have paid more attention to education. I wish I would have went to different events and networked with more people, because what we're not understanding is that social fabric that you build up through your education is going to carry you through life. Like going to Texas A&M in Texas, if you have that ring on, you're going to meet some people to get you in that door. And that's just how it is. People might not like that about if you're in the Houston, Texas area and you went to Texas A&M, and I used to work over in Cypress, Texas. So Cypress, Texas is probably an hour and 30 minutes away from Texas A&M. We have you have 2 colleges coming there, Texas State, Bikini Hill students and Texas A&M students. Texas A&M students, if they had that ring on, they're always telling me about how they're working in downtown Houston, the different jobs, the different access they have just because of that education. Education can get you to the point of owning a team instead of just being a player. We have to start highlighting that. Well, and again, because so few players actually make it to the league, whether it be baseball, whether it be football, whether it be name sport A, so few players actually get to the point where they actually make money doing that sport. And like Kyle said, unfortunately, we've built this mentality that sports is your only way out for some of these kids. It's not. These kids are just as capable of getting an education. These kids are just as capable of making something of themselves, but they need to be given those resources. And unfortunately, we're building these powerhouse football schools that are not academically feasible. So yeah, they're good football players, but that's only going to get you so far. And we need to allow kids that, because don't get me wrong, there's black kids that are not football players. There's black kids that cannot play football, cannot play baseball. They're not sports. They're not athletic. They're like you. They're like me. They're fat kids that ain't going to make nothing. So academics is their path. Academics is how they become president. Academics is how they become a state senator or whatever else, or a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. So we need to prioritize that way more than we need to prioritize athletics. I love athletic, but let's prioritize the kids. Let's prioritize their learning, and let's give them the tools they need to create wealth for themselves and start creating not just wealth for themselves, but generational wealth for their families. Facts. No argument here on that one. You were preaching there, bro.
I would still say that, even though we shouldn't focus on athletics, we do have to realize the importance that athletic events do have on our lives, even as non-athletic people. Me and you played high school sports. I played intramurals in college. People gravitate towards it. It gives them an outlet. It gives them something to do, even if they're not good at it, and it gives them something to talk about. So we can't just say screw athletics, because we need to figure out a way to intertwine the two to get them to be one and the same. Hey, you want to play athletics, you got to get good grades, and take away the stigma of the blue chip recruit being the the horrible student, but getting passed anyway. We need to make sure that people are focusing on both. It's not just one or the other, but we need both. And when we get to that point, then more people will realize. And then we do need to start putting more emphasis on competitions like science fairs and robotics competitions and stuff of that nature, and give those the same clout, the same status symbols as athletics do. Because I don't know if you watched it ever, but you had the Robot Wars back on TV a couple years ago, and those were amazingly fun to watch.
Yeah,
People
really
building
were.
their robots and going and beating the shit out of each other with them. That was a lot of fun to watch as a kid or even as a young adult. So we need to make sure that even if the kid isn't athletic, if he's a smart kid instead, or if he's both, let him have multiple outlets that are going to give him a chance to succeed and get to college and then have a career afterwards.
I think that's happening a little bit now, because now if you're applying for schools, and a little guilty pleasure of mine, I'm gonna let you guys in on, I like watching those YouTube videos of those kids that get into the Ivy League schools. And then they break down all the different things they had to do to get in those schools. And these Ivy League schools like Rice and Texas and even Harvard and all these Dartmouth, these schools don't just let in nerds anymore. You have to have a balance. You have to give back to the community. You have to either play some type of sport, and you have to get the good grade. So I mean, I totally agree with you in regards to finding that balance with athletics. Athletics toughened me up as a kid. It gave me discipline. It gave me sense of purpose. So it definitely helps in life goals, but the narrative and I'm just I could just speak from a more personal perspective as a black man. Just the narrative a lot of the times in our community, and a lot of the people that we put on pedestals within the African American community is athletes and entertainers. So you have athletes and entertainers as our political voices, or as the people that are the leaders of our said group. And I give them all the credit in the world, but your expertise is entertainment. Your expertise is sports. I'm not saying that when you get home, you don't read books or you don't do these different type of things to develop yourself. But it would be nice if someone like Thomas Sowell was known on the level of a LeBron James. So when someone is talking about economics or creating generational wealth, I can't look to LeBron James and say that's going to be the route that I'm going to take, because he's a once in a generation athlete. I can't look to Beyonce and tell my daughter, hey, you can take this route, because that's a once in a generation entertainer. Yeah. But I can look to someone like Thomas Sowell or other black educators and say, hey, listen, if you apply yourself in school, then you can reach this level of knowledge. And then if you you don't even have to look at just strictly black people. You can look at anyone in terms of the business world and say, hey, Amazon, he started off selling books. He found a niche. No one was selling books online. And then he expanded it to that level. So it's all these different ways to raise yourself up out of poverty. But if you only concentrate on the small percentage, you're going to have a higher rate of failure, because that was the smaller percentage that you concentrated on as your escape route.
Yeah. So we had this conversation the other day with our guest, and we talked about people are more worried about the adjective than they are about the noun, right? It's not about whether you're a conservative or a liberal. It's about, are you a black conservative? Are you a Christian conservative? Right. Are you a a progressive liberal. It's more about the adjective than it is the noun. And I think the adjective truly doesn't matter. Right. The noun is what matters, because your skin color, and we talked about that earlier, your skin color doesn't define your belief system or how you were raised or any of those things. All of that is irregardless to what you can do, what you can accomplish in life. And I did like the personalization of the story, because you know what? I do agree that, having a black president, that stuck out to probably a lot of people, saying, you know what? Okay, that barrier, it doesn't exist. That we've been told that barrier was there our entire life. And I don't know, because I wasn't black, but I've been told that barrier was there my entire life, and it's not, but the great thing is it helped you find your awakening as an individual, and it helped you find your awakening. But I guess I have a question. So we talked to a lady from Detroit. Well, she was from Texas. She's now in Detroit. So she took the opposite route of you. She went from Texas to Detroit. You went from Detroit to maybe y'all gave each other a high five along the way.
All passing up, yeah.
Yeah. So she said, we need to get the government more in control, because they can start fixing some of these issues with racism. And I was like, well, you claim that there's institutional racism, but yet you want to give more power to the institution that you claim is racist, and thinking that they'll fix it. And you made the great point, from Milton Friedman, that the free market, well, me and Kyle have argued this for a long time, the free market does a much better job of bringing society along. When you look at Jackie Robinson playing in the major leagues, that was a free market move. That owner made more money because having Jackie Robinson on his team meant his team played better, and they won more titles. And that meant he got more money for the Dodgers. He got to make money. It was a free market move. And then we look at the cake shop out in Colorado. If the people of that community would have just shut their mouths and stopped buying cakes from that cake shop, he'd gone out of business.
Yep.
And he'd have been out of their hair. But because they made a national scene about it, then people who did agree with him and were willing to buy from him, gave him money, and now he's doing better than ever. So they didn't hurt him. They helped him. So, going into that, why do you, from the days of, it would be LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson starting the Great Society, where, he went into inner cities and, the war on poverty and all these things. Ever since then, we've seen that the black community has gone to the Democratic Party. What do you think, for people like you, what do you think it's going to take for more people to start seeing, not that they're going to leave the Democratic Party, but at least start evaluating their individuality more?
Oh, well, it's a funny phenomenon when we're only 13% of the population, right? So what a lot of people fail to acknowledge, or they're scared to acknowledge, is a lot of the times we self-segregate ourselves, though. Like, segregation was eliminated years ago, but we self-segregate. A lot of people, they find themselves congregating with people that look like them, do the same things that they do, different things like that. Yeah. So that self-segregation, it goes back to elementary school with peer pressure and things like that. You feel that peer pressure. You don't want to isolate yourself further from the group based on the ideas that you might have. So you might believe totally opposite of the liberal policy, but you don't want to expose yourself amongst the group and have to deal with the ridicule and the name calling and things like that. So it takes a certain type of individual that doesn't really care about that type of ridicule. It doesn't really care what people say. It's just they have a strong belief system, and they're willing to stand 10 toes down on that belief system. Now,
it takes that middle child.
Yeah.
Right. Like we talked about, we've been ridiculed.
And that's who I am. I'm the middle child, so I had to figure it out. I had to figure it out myself anyway, and I had to say, hey, this is what it is. So that's right. That's what I ended up doing. But going back to what you said about the lady, and my cousin is like a far left progressive. But the thing about it is he's my best friend too, though. So we always arguing back and forth. And what I told him, he's a Bernie supporter. So what I told him, I said, listen, man, you always are preaching that it's systematic racism, that America was built on racism and different things like that. Okay, let's say if I give you that, let's say if I say that's true. if we're only 13% of the population, you want to elect Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders wants to expand government. Government then becomes larger, more powerful. So that government that you're saying is all these different things now is more powerful and has more control your ability to navigate out of these different situations. Why would you want that? It makes no sense to me, though. And let's just be honest, these people who work in the Defense Department, people who work on K Street and Capitol Hill, these people come from Ivy League schools. I went to a university. I'm still not at the level of someone graduating from Georgetown or these other schools that are getting into Washington, D.C. Look, Syracuse, that's my favorite. I went to Syracuse football camp growing up. I'm surprised you're not a reporter or something, man. I thought that was a journalism school.
I got my master's in business administration. I got my MBA from Syracuse.
Okay. Awesome. Donovan McNabb and all that. Carmelo Anthony. I was my Derek Coleman's from my neighborhood in Detroit. So Derek Coleman is a big, basketball player from Syracuse back in the day, but he's from my neighborhood. So yeah, big time guy in Detroit. But yeah, so those individuals, they control DC, they control the political machine. Why would you want to give them more power and then control over these different industries if you say that government is systematically racist? I will never understand that, the logic in that.
I agree.
So we do have a question coming from, and I'll click on myself because my editor is complaining about you not getting the opportunity to blow your nose or anything when I'm talking. When the question from the chat comes is the person is curious if anyone from your family, your friends, etc. have moved the same direction that you have politically, and they were also going Thomas Sowell in the chat. So they were very, and then when you mentioned his name, they're like, oh my God, yes. So. But yeah, has anyone in your family, other than the brother that you talked about, and of your friend group, have anybody else made the transition to being conservative?
No, I won't say that. My brother is probably the closest one that agrees on a lot of the issues that I talk about. It's just that Trump is so polarizing in nature. It's hard for a lot of people to come out in regards to conservatism. But I mean, I just feel like it's a beautiful thing that you have a lot. Doesn't matter if you're black, brown, whatever, yellow, a lot of people are starting to realize that politics is about policies. It's about policies and it's about the numbers game. And I know when we were show prepping and everything, we were supposed to talk about Bernie Sanders and socialism and things like that. But now Bloomberg is coming up, and that's one thing. Since you being in economics and then your brother being in computers, when I'm in school for my MBA right now, and what we learn on is the Bloomberg terminal. This guy is one of the most pragmatic, numbers-based guy that you will ever run into in your life. That's why when a lot of people say this guy is racist, I'm like, he's not racist. What he is he plays the numbers with no emotion involved in those numbers. So I feel coming up that Bloomberg and Donald Trump are on a collision course, and it's going to be a battle that's going to go down in the history books, to be honest. But in terms of me moving anyone towards conservatism, I'm very vocal about it to my mothers, to my brothers and sisters, to my friends, and I will argue with them all day long. I just hope that I'm planting that little mustard seed, and then they just start to look at the world a little bit different in certain instances. Like, well, you have to vote your interests, and if your interest is preventing illegal immigrants from coming in the country and taking jobs away from other laborers and non-skilled workers that are American citizens, then building a wall is a good thing, because they might lie to you and say, hey, illegal, and this is another guy that opened my mind. And the funny thing is, 3 years ago, I could have swore he was just the biggest racist in the world. They got me believing he hung with neo-Nazis. But what was it's slipping my mind now, but Trump's main strategist his first year in office?
Steve Bannon.
Bannon is a genius. Bannon is a genius in terms of using illegal immigration to suppress wage growth because of bringing in cheaper labor. So you go to the boss and say, hey, I think I need a raise. He can bring in illegals. That suppresses wage growth. That also is going to allow them to then move out other unskilled workers, HB1 visas, HB2 visas, things like that. That man is a genius, but they got rid of him in the media because they labeled him a racist. So, I mean, I just have my eyes all the way open, and that's what's helping me moving forward.
No, Steve Bannon and Steve Miller are both on that same plan, and I am too. I agree with you that, you know, it's supply demand. When you look at labor as a supply to the market, and you look at the demand being work, you know, the consumer here being the companies wanting our labor, we need to initiate scarcity in labor to get wages to rise. Yes. To make the price go up of labor, we need to initiate scarcity. But when we bring in all these additional labor, and you know what, if you really want to combat the left on that narrative, all you have to say is one of the biggest proponents of open borders are the Koch brothers. These two guys are bigger proponents of open borders than anybody in this country. They were hard against Trump because they want labor. They want cheap, affordable, controllable labor.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you threaten someone with a deportation, you can get them to work a lot cheaper. So, yeah, that's if they're here legally, you can't make that threat, and they can stand up to you and be like, no, I'm a highly skilled laborer, or even if I'm not highly skilled, I've got your system down, and no one else can do it as good as I can. You know, you need to give me a raise. You can't just bring in someone off the streets who can do what I can do and be able to do how I do it within 3 months. So that definitely helps people, you know, like myself, like Ross, like yourself, to be able to go to our employers and be like, hey man, you need to step up. I may not have other offers, but if I started looking, I could find them, because now there's a scarcity in that labor force.
Well, and the scarcity isn't for, again, this is where we go back to education. The scarcity isn't for people like me who have a specialized skill. They're for people who don't have those skills, people who are going to go work in generalized labor and unskilled labor. And when we're not educating a certain segments of our population, which are predominantly the minority populations, when we're not getting the education of those people, when we're not getting them the skills to go compete, and then we're supplanting them with all this additional labor who, you know, if you need somebody to dig a hole, I'm just going to pick the cheapest guy that can dig me a hole. I really don't care where they come from, who they are. Your character doesn't really have effect. Who can dig me the deepest hole the fastest for the cheapest amount of money? That's what I care about.
And that's the thing about it. So this is how, and this is another thing I think about. Okay, so in any great society, the sad part about it is you're going to have ditch diggers. You can't name me any great society over the course of history that didn't have ditch diggers. What you have is you have a situation, and it goes across the board. You have white ditch diggers, black ditch diggers, Mexican ditch diggers. But what you have in terms of what liberal policy is, they want to come in with globalization, and they want to outsource these different things. Like you have unskilled workers who do the labor work on oil refineries, you know, who work the holes and different things like that. You have unskilled workers who work the coal mines and these different areas like this. But when you come in and you broad stroke with technology and you wipe it out so fast, you don't give people enough time to adjust to that. And I think that's what happened in terms of manufacturing with in terms of liberalism, and even with some Republicans. You had that with manufacturing. We're outsourcing these different jobs to China. We're outsourcing. The whole textile industry is in India. No one talks about that. But then you took all this away from us. You didn't give us enough time to adjust. So when someone comes in and they start talking American first, and then they start holding these big major corporations' feet to the fire, like, hey, listen, I need you to bring some business back. I understand that you have to the profit and loss and revenue, and you need to serve your stockholders and things like that. I get it on a business sense, but I also get it on a practical sense of the worker, the laborer, and give them enough time to adjust to that marketplace instead of just coming in and we just sold the country from underneath them and sent it to Asia, Southeast Asia. That's my problem. Yep. That's that's what got me behind Trump more than anything. Like, I have to think, I can't think just like, oh, I'm a Black American, I have to think as American as a whole in terms of protecting the greater interests of this country. And as being a superpower country, our hands got dirty. That's just it's 1 and 2. If we're going to be a superpower, we're going to have to play dirty because no one else is playing nice. So why are we going to play nice? My whole issue is with China. I don't know how they manipulate us in these rooms, these boardrooms, but we're in a position where they're economic warfare. Slavery isn't legal in America, and that's a good thing. But slavery is definitely legal over there in China. So we're shipping business over there. We're benefiting from slave labor over there. We're benefiting from people making 75 cents an hour, $3 a week over there with Nike and these different companies. And it's selling the country up underneath us because everybody says, oh, nobody wants to do these jobs. That's not true. America was built on hard work. So you have people who just want to provide a living for their family, put food on the table, who are willing to do these jobs. Let's give them the chance to do some self-development programs in terms of education and things like that, and help move them towards a more skilled labor force. Milton Friedman always talks about, and Thomas Sowell always talks about, to go back to them, is, hey, you're not supposed to count on these labor positions. Your thing is, you get into these labor positions, you take the opportunity to develop yourself and develop a skill set, and then we pay you for being a skilled laborer. We're not supposed to be fighting for higher wages for a Uber driver. No, you're an Uber driver so then that you can work your way up, get a skill set, develop yourself, library books, however you have to do it. And then we pay you for that skill position that you've developed yourself into.
Well, and so Kyle and I both grew up on a pretty big ranch where we saw our grandfather, we saw our dad, we saw all of the men in our family work their rears off. So my mom's dad, he owned a big farm. He had cattle. You know, he was picking corn every summer. You know, we were out there husking the corn with him. My grandfather on my dad's side, you know, raising a ton of cattle, baling hay. You know, we saw these guys working their butts off, and we learned that work ethic. And I think when you go to your home and you have you see your dad, you see your mom working your butt off, it makes you say, you know what, I'm going to work my butt off. But the other thing is that you then value the output of that work. You then value what you got from that backbreaking labor. You don't want to give it away. You don't want to say, oh, let somebody else who's not working as hard as me take what I've worked so hard for. Because, you know, my grandfather's my dad, you know, Kyle, all of us, we've worked our butts off, and I'm sure you have as well, to get where you are. So why should somebody be able to come in now and say, oh, half of that's mine? And when you have that culture where you know in your family, and this is, I argue this back in the 30s, in the early 20s, when FDR passed the New Deal, there was a couple cultural things that are much different now. So number one, when he passed the New Deal, men worked. There wasn't this, you know, welfare deprived nation where, oh, well, we'll live off of welfare. Men felt a sense of pride about going to work, having a job, and providing for their families. And so the Green New Deal, the Neal Deal at the time was just about putting in place systems so men could go back to work. Unfortunately, as Milton Friedman said, there's no such thing more permanent than a temporary government program.
Good question, Ross, because you're going to know this quote. What did Milton Friedman say about, he said, an idea a great idea might be a great idea, but the application of that idea might not be something to that effect. It might be a great idea. The New Deal might be a great idea in the thought of the idea, but the application of the idea it's not possible. We can never reach that level of utopia. It's never going to be that. Like I said, it's always been a labor force. The only reason why it might not be a labor force in the near future is because of AI. And that's going to leave a lot of people in a tough situation. But that's my thing. The idea of the New Deal might have been a great idea, but the application of it is the problem.
Well, that's exactly what I was getting to. You actually are going right into it. So what Milton Friedman was talking about there, his point there is that human nature always takes effect, right? The first assumption you make in any economic model is that rational people work in their own best self-interest. Meaning people are selfish. We are selfish people. We want better. I want better for me than I want for you. And that's just honest truth. If it's between me eating and you eating, I'm going to do what I need to do so I eat and you don't, if that's the choice I have to make. Of course, in any economic system, regardless whether it's socialism, capitalism, whatever, somebody fails, right? Somebody loses. But capitalism creates the most winners. Right? The least amount of losers and the most winners. Exactly. What happens in socialism is everybody loses equally. No, we have a very few winners. We've seen in Russia, we've seen in Venezuela, we've seen in North Korea, we've seen in name a socialist country. We have these very small group of winners, and then we have this very large amount of losers who all lose equally. Whereas in capitalism, we allow people to succeed, and then through their success, they're able to help those people who are not winning and bring them up with them. Whether that be by creating jobs, by donating to charity, by doing other things. But it's about the freedom of choice. It's about letting the individual make decisions that are best for them and forcing them to work within a society that the best benefit to them is helping somebody else. So if I own a business, it's in my best interest to hire people and pay them. It's in my best interest to hire good people and pay them a reasonable wage so that they'll do good labor, because I'll make more money from that and stay in business longer than hiring people who don't know what the crap they're doing and they lose me business.
Correct.
So Milton Friedman is dead on. I love Milton Friedman, man. Yeah. I love Milton Friedman, the jam. I hate that I never got to meet him, that he passed before I really got into economics, but Milton Friedman is the man, and so much of what he says is so true, and that we need to allow people freedom of choice, allow people to make choices for themselves that derive from their own personal best self-interest, and then allowing economics to just play out and allowing people to exist within the society and just be people within the society, not be the black guy within the society, not be the Asian guy within the society, not be the gay guy within society, just be within the society and operate amongst each other and then benefit from those reactions and interactions with each other.
Awesome point. And you know why today's time is one of the greatest times in history for that to be able to happen. And that's why I feel like a lot of these elites are wanting and backing socialism. It's because of the internet. We have so much opportunity, because I'm not naive enough to say that sometimes prejudice doesn't play a part in the free market system. I'm not naive enough to say in a perfect world, free market will work just like that. But like you said, it's a comfort level where you work with people who look like you, who like the same things like you and different things like that. But what you have now with the internet, I can work anonymously from the internet. You don't know who I am. And that's the beauty of the real free market. You have a lot of these younger generations, these late millennials, these Generation Zers, where they're making my salary on the internet within the comfort of their own home because they've learned how to master the internet. That's what we need to do. Instead of trying to change the whole system to socialism, where the government is nationalizing business and different things like that, we need to teach people how to take advantage of e-commerce, take advantage of understand generational wealth, understand how to get loans, understand these different aspects of economics, of business, of capitalism. So then they're able to fully take advantage of that. Because the beautiful thing about it is the way America has gone, no one has ever seen with America running on full steam. They haven't seen that yet. And that's a scary thing. It's always been segments of society that's been kept out of being fully involved into the process. So what Trump is doing with Make America Great Again is he's positioning everyone to be a part of the process and a part of this machine. And then let's then re-expose ourselves to the global market with everybody participating in some form or fashion within this global dynamic. So that's what another thing I appreciate about Trump, but that's what I appreciate about technology and the internet and how it's allowing marginalized groups to have access fully to the knowledge of the free market, but also the application of the free market.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to go back to a couple things that we've hit on previously. One of the few things in the State of the Union address that got bipartisan support was Tim Scott's Opportunity Zones, and it wasn't much bipartisan support. It was maybe one or two Democrats stood up and cheered for it. And then our friend who came on previously from Detroit, who was talking about how there's people in Detroit that want to work, but because they're so the jobs are so much in the outer city and not in the inner city themselves, they're finding it hard to find jobs because there's nothing close. Whereas these opportunity zones will allow small businesses to come into those inner cities, create businesses that then hire people within the local areas and actually start employing people and have the availability for people to move up throughout society, because now they're not just stuck at home anymore or not working anymore, but they're able to work close to their home with or without transportation, save enough money, get transportation, and then go get that better job outside the city.
Right.
So with the opportunity zones, I'm not 100%, up to date with it. Could you kind of explain it a little bit and then give your opinion on it?
Well, Tim Scott, South Carolina, he's a big proponent of the opportunity zones. Bringing businesses and giving them that relief that they need in order to establish a business. A lot of people complain about how people get tax breaks and these major corporations get tax breaks and get relief for starting businesses. Let's give these incentives to these small businesses in order to do the same things. I'm a big proponent of that because the secret sauce of America, what a lot of people don't realize, and that's why China and a lot of these Germany and a lot of these other countries could never mess with us, is because diversity breeds innovation. Now, diversity is America's biggest strength, but it's also our biggest weakness, because diversity does breed innovation, but with the diversity comes the different needs and objectives of multiple different groups, though. But in terms of with the opportunity zones, one thing that we have to realize is that it's business ownership that's the key in America. So you have these opportunity zones. I support these people coming into the community. I'm one of the rare people that say, hey, gentrification is only looked at as a bad thing is because you have people coming into these communities and they're starting these businesses, but the people in the community aren't owning the businesses. They're just working for the businesses. So I'm hoping that with these opportunity zones, with Tim Scott and the other people backing it, President Trump backing it, and everybody else I hope that more people who live in that community take advantage of the knowledge and the information and start their own businesses and benefit from the incentives attached to the opportunity zones. That's my only thing. Like, it's not, in America, you only can reach a certain level of wealth working for someone. At some point in time in your life, if you're going to be a consultant or an entrepreneur or whatever, you're going to have to go into business for yourself if you're going to achieve real generational wealth and real success in America.
Yeah.
Very, very true. Yeah. We live that way. We're very big entrepreneurials here. I mean, we're not starting this show to be wealthy or anything. It's just to get the news out, the word out. But we also realize that if we were to make a success, this is a potential revenue stream for us.
Exactly.
I've got a revenue stream on the side. I'm sure Ross has one or two as well. And then I work full time as well. So
Yep.
I'm busy. Ross is busy. All of us have that knowledge that if you want to get rich in America, it's not by working for somebody else. Now you can get well off, but you're never going to get rich.
Yeah.
As like if you would if you had your own business. But yeah. Now we're hour and a half almost into the show. Gabriel, do you have a little bit more time, or do you need to wrap it up?
No, I have some time. I'm good.
Okay.
So,
Ross,
I wanted to say one
go.
thing though. Okay, I mean, I wanted to say this just in relation to what you said. Americans have got to stop being greedy and understand that generational wealth does not happen in one generation. It takes several generations to build that amount of wealth. It's not, oh, we were lower class now and we should be billionaires tomorrow. It is over generations you build this wealth up, and that over generation, every generation should get better than the generation before it. Our dad, he worked in the oil field and he made a good living. He provided for us so that we could go to good schools and get a good education. And now we are making more money than what he made. And now we're going to be able to send our kids to better schools and give them better opportunities and allow the generations to get better and progress as they go. But I think a large part of what America has become today, what we see with the socialist movement is, I want it now. I deserve it. I deserve it. It's me. I should be getting.
I think Ross got a little too heated there.
Overheated the wires. He was making some good points, though. I definitely agree with everything that he was saying, and that's the beauty of it, though. I mean, it's a checkered past with African Americans, with blacks. It's a hard history to look at, but if you can't cure it, you have to endure it. And that's how I look at it. It's something that happened in the past. It's something that we have to grow from. We have to learn from as a people. But if you look at from the time of Jim Crow to where we are now, those people and the sacrifices they made during the civil rights movement has given us in this present moment the opportunity to play the long game. And that's all that I'm saying. We have to play the long game in terms of building generational wealth and moving to that next level within society. And that's the main thing that matters is now, investing in education. So then now your kid can go to that better school, understanding capitalism. So now that you can make with the stock market doing as well as it is, you're able to, make a little extra money on the side and invest in retirement funds, invest in different CDs and things like that. So I'm definitely in agreement with Ross on that.
It looks like he's come back on us. Ross, you there?
Yeah. Yeah. Can y'all hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that. I lost connection all of a sudden. I am out here in the middle of BFE, West Texas. So
we
sometimes
joked
internet
that you got so heated that you overheated the transmission lines and lost the communication.
That's right. I mean, when I get on something I'm passionate about, I'll go to it. But I guess just to finalize what I was saying there is that, it takes time. It takes effort. It takes perseverance. It takes being willing to get knocked down over and over and over again. Kyle, I know he's been knocked down, and, I'll knock him down a few more times. And, he's going to knock me down a few more times. But you know what? You just keep trying to walk forward. And I think for a lot of people, they've lost that faith that things will come for them, that there is that opportunity, that they just need to keep at it. They just need to keep the faith and keep working hard and keep pushing forward. Whether you're Christian, whether you're religious or not, that in the American system, there is that ability to just keep moving forward and take that next step, push to the next step, and get what you can out of it.
Yeah, totally. And this is my thing. And this is another thing that once again, to go all the way full circle back to the beginning of the show, is we have to start loving America again. I mean, this thing where we have people, the American, first of all, mainstream media pushes a narrative that every businessman is the bad guy, when a businessman, if he has a successful business, he's supplying jobs for thousands of people, and those thousands of people are able to feed their children, and those thousands of children are able to go to school with a full stomach, and then they have the mental capacity to learn. So let's look at it in that way. So we have to start loving America again. This self-hate, this is all we have. This is all we have. All we have is America. I'm not saying America is perfect. Let's build upon it. But this idea of anarchy, of tearing it down and starting afresh, you don't even have a clue on how that will be done. And if you think these other countries that are feeding you like, oh, we're going to be your friends if it all breaks down. No, they're going to get all their get backs over all these years on what America might have did or might not did on us. So for you to be an American citizen and want to tear down this country and tear down the structure that we built is idiotic to me. So mainstream media, mainstream music, whatever like that, we need to get back to loving America. Understand, if I love someone, I'm going to be able to have an honest conversation with them to help build and evolve as a person, or let's say in this case, a nation. We can, but to come from the position of it's so bad, we have to tear it down to its studs is idiotic and it's counterproductive.
I can't agree, man. I think that's the perfect way to sum up this conversation. And so, I mean, I want you, Saint Kincade, I want to thank you so much for coming on with us today. I mean, what a great conversation we've had. It's been fun. It has been informative. I mean, this is as good as it gets, man. This is what we love doing. Love having just these conversations. Love getting to talk to people and get to know and get to feel for them and hearing their perspective and knowing why they think the way they think. So thank you so much. Let all of our listeners know, anybody who's listening to this, anybody who sees this, let them know where they can find you on social media. Whatever you want to let them know, right? Tell them right now.
First and foremost, man, I just want to say thank you to you guys for reaching out to me and giving me the opportunity just to speak with you guys. It's always fun talking with intelligent young millennials about these different things that's going on in our society. And it comes down to it, like, we have to begin to celebrate each other's differences. People make our differences a bad thing these days. I have something to bring to the conversation because I'm Black. You guys have something to bring to the conversation because you're white, but we have commonalities. And one of the greatest commonalities is the fact that we're all American citizens. Now, the last thing that I want to point out before I stop is we need to stop saying this is going to be an easy win for Trump in 2020. And we all need to get out there and we all need to spread the word and we all need to motivate people to get out there and vote. The more people get online and say, oh, this is going to be easy, he's going to win 45 states. Somebody who's lazy minded is going to be, hey, I don't need to get up and vote. They said he's going to win 45 states. So let's stop it with that. And then lastly, let's pay attention to that Bloomberg guy, because that guy is a pragmatist. That guy is strictly by the numbers and he has the money to spend to attack certain demographic. Yeah. So if you're someone that believes in conservatism, if you're someone that is able to communicate, reach out to somebody that you see that might be an independent and try to bring them over to our side and expose them to conservatism and our values and what we believe in and how it can help to propel the country even further. So if you want to reach out to me, it's @statusculture, @status_culture. The name on there is Saint Kincade, and it's been a pleasure.
All right, guys, and all the links to Saint Kincade are in the if you're watching this on YouTube, look at the description. I put the link to his Twitter on there. Go and follow him. Follow us, follow Zero Gravity Media, follow Shoe Bros Unfiltered, follow Kyle, follow myself. The links are there in the description for you. Please, we thank you all, guys, for listening to us, for paying attention, for being a part of this conversation, for getting on the message chat and whatever else. We hope that anybody that's watching this in the future, hope this was informative for you. Hope it was something that was entertaining. Hope it was enjoyable, and hope it was informative. And again, we can't say thank you enough to Saint Kincade for coming on and giving us his time and being able to put up with me and my stubborn ass brother.
Middle childs for life.
Middle child for life.
Thanks and gig 'em, Saint Kincade. Thanks and gig 'em.
All right, man. Have a blessed one.
You too.
Yeah, have a great night, man.
All right, brother.
Okay, I'm watching the live stream now. I'm going to see what it does. Okay, there's the thumbnail, and I don't hear anything. So I think you did it right. So go ahead and well, click on it and then click live because you might be a few seconds behind.